and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Videomail for the week of May 5th, 2014. Welcome to the new site. To you new members, welcome to the new site. I got ahead of myself. I'm in a new building, so I kind of messed that up. Welcome to the site, to you new members, and welcome back to the old members. The Ask Videomail is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance answered in a video just like this one, but I need your question if I'm going to answer it, so please send your questions to webmaster@kennyroy.com. Almost got ahead of myself again. There's no such thing as a stupid question, and it is the best way to get the most out of the site. And man, it's all mixed up, but I'm just gonna go with it. I go through all the questions and I answer the ones that I think will help the most people. Man, that was rough. I apologize for that. We are not going to stop though. We're going to keep on going. As you can see, I am in a new building. And just outside the view of the camera right now is a mess that is epic. It is an epic mess here. And we're going to have to get it cleaned up because we got to keep on rocking and rolling on our projects. And KennyRoy.com, of course. So, all that aside, it's good to be moved. I'm happy where I am. And there's just going to be some changes around here. Not any changes in terms of, what you're going to get here on this site, but there are going to be changes around here on the site. You're going to see a few new people for the launch of my book, Finish Your Film, Tips and Tricks for Making an Animated Short in Maya. That's coming out this week. And we're going to be welcoming all those people to the site. It's really kind of like serendipitous because lining up with me finishing The Little Painter. Booty Call is already on there. That's the film that is the example film that we used for the book. But also Little Painter is going to be finished up very soon. So that's kind of awesome. I'm not going to bore you with any more site announcements. And actually, you know what? All I'm doing right now is just confusing myself. So let's get to the question. Let's just get to what you're here for. Yes, Ricard, I would be absolutely happy to stop rambling and bumbling and fumbling my words and get right to that question. It would be my pleasure. Thank you for asking that question. When I talk about doing overlap by the book, what I kind of mean is when you are given your first example, your first explanation of what overlap is, doing it like that, where basically in general, whatever is moving, anything that's attached kind of lags behind. And you can do this sort of straight ahead and kind of do it almost like automatically, sort of on autopilot. You don't have to think too much about pose. You don't have to think too much about silhouette. You don't have to think too much about force. You don't have to think too much about any of the other things. You kind of just are animating it like it was an example from a book about what overlap is. Okay, so not trying to do anything advanced with your overlap, not trying to do anything sort of like overly complicated with it, sort of just doing vanilla overlap. The assignment that most schools have is a pendulum. Okay, a pendulum with a weight on it. And that's a pretty good example of how to do a by-the-book overlap. So let's quickly just do something sort of similar. I just set up this little chain here, okay? And each one of these little things has a little bit of, well, I moved this pivot point so it's up at the top of the object, okay? And if you select them all, you'll see that they wiggle like that. Okay, so I'm just going to really quickly do basically the pendulum assignment. Okay, I'm going to start it up here. I'm going to move it over here, and then kind of quickly move it back and forth. So it moves, and then it does a little bit of a quick movement like that. Okay, so really, all you have to think about when you say by the book is kind of the motion is kind of in the opposite direction of the acceleration, right? Sort of. It's a good way to think about it. So if there's no acceleration right now, then there's no curve on it, and as it starts going, it's going to like lag behind, right? And that's how we've been sort of taught to do overlap. I'm going to set a key. I'm going to be careful to set a key just on the rotates for the purpose of this, so that when I auto key it now, it'll only set a key on the rotates and not all channels on this on these objects. So it's moving, and it's sort of like all of its acceleration is in this first little part, but you can have it just take a little bit more wind resistance, you know, kind of whatever, but it's really acceleration that you have to think about, not really the traveling, because as it's traveling, as it's moving, right, that overlap is not going to increase really. In fact, if this kept on going at the same speed, only wind resistance would make it kind of, let's just imagine this is going really, really, really fast to the right, right? This is what it would look like, right? It would be kind of like moving like this. It would be wind resistance would be, gravity would be pulling it that back down, and then wind resistance would be pushing it back up. So, you know, if it was flying through the air, it would look like this, right? Okay, well, we're only taking into consideration kind of just the acceleration right now, okay? And then it starts coming to a stop, and what is coming to a stop? Coming to a stop is considered deceleration, right? Deceleration. Now, what's deceleration? Negative acceleration. So as it passes this keyframe and it comes slower, we're going to have it swing the other way, okay? And sort of come to what looks like is going to be a little bit of a settle. I'm trying to keep it all in just one axis, the x-axis. As you can see, I'm animating it back and forth. And then this very quick acceleration and very quick deceleration, okay? In fact, it almost hits a wall. So I'll set a key on this to be a little bit further back, and then it'll really whip the other way. And let's have it start resolving. It won't finish by the time we're done with this. Okay, so all of that took me about 5 minutes to do while talking about it. And it's not going to be perfect, but this is basically, you know, by the book overlap. So we have the keys where they need to be in general, but specifically it's time to, you know, kind of like tighten this up. So let's go forward kind of like moment by moment. I would say that it's working pretty well up until it comes to a stop here. I would say that it probably wiggles back and forth too quickly. Okay, so let's bring up the rotate. Here's a little trick. If you go to your graph editor, I've shown you this before, but it's been a long time. So I just like select the rotates and go show selected. Where am I? Show selected types, and then only the rotates are showing, and I can hit frame, and then here are my keys, right? Yeah, so this is clearly it's clearly overlapping back a little bit too quickly. So let's fix that. I'm trying to get a good view here. Here we go. I think we can probably have this take twice as long. Right? All right, and now this needs a little bit of room. I don't like how those are flattening out, so I'm just going to spline them. Spline both of them. Okay. And now let's have this all take a little bit longer. And what I just did is I scaled it around the 0 point. Why? Here's why. I know the rotate X is how much like to the left or the right that this thing is actually moving. And like sort of at a glance, I can see it like sort of like wobbling on either side here. So I just use the scale tool to bring the amount of overlap down a little bit more towards the middle. Do you see that? I know exactly what's going on because I sort of have this fundamental in mind. This goes back to the advanced workflow lecture that I have in the store in terms of how much knowing what each fundamental sort of looks like in the graph editor itself can really help you save time. I mean, this overlap. I mean, I can sort of tell exactly what this looks like in the panel just by looking at the graph editor. Okay. Oops. There we go. Let's just see what we have here. Okay. So again, with just a little bit of tweaking, I think this is a little late now. Let's just delete this and see what happens. I'll flat this. Let's just see what happens. Yeah, that plateau is not needed. That plateau is actually not helping stuff. Okay, so another 5 minutes. Another 5 minutes of work, and this is basically by the book overlap. Looking at objects kind of moving in a expected, standardized, sort of non-creative way, just basically pure motion on these things. Now, one thing that we can do to make it look just a little bit more interesting is offset these. Now, this might be too much. I'm doing 1 frame of offset on each child object. So let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So this just makes it so that the overlap is sort of that inertia, that change of direction is actually traveling down this little chain, and as the change of direction travels down the chain, it takes a little bit of time for it to get to the next joint, therefore creating a little bit of offset. Okay, so that's what we end up getting. So by the book plus a little bit of offset is gives us a little bit of interest, something that's kind of fun to look at, something that's not too hard to do. But this is a totally different workflow than when I say like overlap should be done sort of like by offsetting. With that, it's when you create the motion that you know you're going to need, and then you offset and basically find by offsetting it and watching it where that level, that amount of overlap and that amount of delay in the timing actually feels right. All right, so that's a totally different way of working, but still valid, still cool, and but it has different applications. You'd use that in different moments than you would use by the book. So anytime, now you know. Now you know, and this is good. I'm glad you asked this question because we do have to standardize terms. Now you know when I'm working or you're following along, and I say like, okay, now it's time to do the tail, and I'll probably do just by the book on the tail. Now you know, oh, okay, that's what he's talking about. Basically, grab all the controls, basically, and as the inertia, you look at the acceleration, and as that inertia sort of like travels into the tail, it like lags behind, and just follow the acceleration in whatever direction. So that's it. It's that simple. You probably were animating overlap kind of like this when you were doing your pendulum assignment in the beginning. There's definitely ways to overthink it. There's ways to kind of like take it and think that it's pose-based. There's ways to grab each controller and sort of try to do them one at a time. I don't recommend that. I think that you'll just get a lot of disconnection, and you can probably arrive at the exact same result as we have here right now, but just with a lot more work. I just can't imagine the workflow where that would serve you better. Okay, so there we go. Buy the book. Overlap, great question. Please send more questions to webmaster@kennyroy.com. Remember, you get 2 days free added to your subscription every single time you send in a question, and it is the best way to get the most out of the site. Anim Gym webcast this Friday. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. My name is Kenny Roy. Good luck with your animation, and as always, rock on.